Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks on this third episode of the Neighborhood Watch. In this, we look at India's neighborhood and the various activities or the news-making incidents that happen around us. I have with me Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, a retired Director General of the Artillery, a speaker, an author. He's got a blog with about 200 articles. And let me actually take this opportunity to thank him for guiding me through this process of getting into the strategic world. Thank you, sir, for joining me and for your guidance for me to understand what's happening around us.
Well, thanks a lot, Adi. It's been a pleasure. You've been too kind with your words, but I think you have a strategic view of in your own right. And let's get on with the neighborhood.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to, run us through certain news-making incidents that have happened in the past about 15, 20 days since the last episode of the Neighborhood Watch. And let's see how we come up to our main topic of the day, which is the Afghan-Pakistan relations. There's a lot happening within that region, within Pakistan, within Afghanistan. I'd like to start with Myanmar, sir. Myanmar military regime, it continues to implement projects related to China's BRI. A lot of commitments have been made by the military junta towards continuing the projects with regards to the Myanmar-China economic corridor. As a matter of fact, the China's ambassador to Myanmar, who called the current ruler of Myanmar as the leader. This is one of the first countries in the world to actually acknowledge General Min Aung Hlaing as the leader of Myanmar. So that's a very important development where the Chinese had steered clear earlier from this particular issue. Moving on to Bhutan, Bhutan seems to be having a big headache from the Chinese. They have encroached into the northern region. As a matter of fact, 66 miles of linking roads, 5 military of police outposts, and a couple of villages that have been set up in the disputed territories. Bhutan seems to be wanting to deal with China on a bilateral way because it's something that they've been trying out. Let's see how this story pans out. Bangladesh running through a heavy COVID surge. They have imposed a lockdown as of the 28th of June. And as a matter of fact, they are planning to extend it. And they've had one of the highest death tolls since the start of the pandemic in Bangladesh. Interesting news. Chinese were caught embezzling funds from Bangladesh, and they've actually withdrawn from 3 infrastructural projects. These projects were in the railway sector. And these companies, what they used to do was they used to increase the time which was required for, going through this project, and thereby increase the expenses and put Bangladeshis into a further trouble. That's an interesting thing, an interesting way that the Chinese do things. Sir, I don't know if you noticed this similar news that came out of Zimbabwe as well a couple of days ago.
Well, that's their normal habit, Chinese. So nothing new. These things expose the Chinese way of doing things. And that is why if you see Bangladesh, I'm sure your analysis will tell you that Bangladesh is handling China with an even hand.
As a matter of fact, I think amongst our neighbors, that is one of the only countries that has taken some sort of pangas, if I may use that word very freely.
Yeah, I agree with you.
The recent discourse when the Chinese ambassador had threatened them, and now what has happened is that the cabinet division, which was responsible for procuring the vaccines from China, had disclosed the purchase price of $10 per dose, and this was against the agreement which the Chinese had signed from the Bangladeshis, and this caused a bit of a row. And the Bangladeshis have come out and said that Chinese will not sell us the vaccines at the same rate again. So that just tells you. And Bangladeshis, one thing that one must note, has been very, very open about their relations with China, unlike other countries like Pakistan, Nepal, and so on and so forth. As I said, Nepal, so there were a huge protest in Sindhupal Chowk against the Chinese road constructions, which led to some landslides because of heavy rainfalls and stuff like that. Almost a town that came up in arms against the Chinese companies, and they blamed the company for causing serious environmental disasters. A lot of people in distress amidst the pandemic, which is also raging. They're getting about 1,800 cases a day which is quite serious. And I think, sir, you and I have taken this matter up with regards to Taliban and the threat that China faces from Taliban. I'd like to share this one news that I saw, that the Taliban has captured a strategic port town on the border of Afghanistan, Tajikistan. So our prediction, when you had mentioned this, that the Chinese are going to start, militarizing that area to protect their own self, is actually coming.
It will happen.
Yeah.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
Taliban is actually inching that side.
Yeah.
Now, coming to the topic of the day, Pakistan. Pakistan has developed an homemade anti-COVID vaccine called Pakvac. Very interesting. I think I wish them the best of luck with this particular thing. Another interesting thing which actually shows you the level and the diplomatic row that the Pakistanis are today in. Over 6,18,877 Pakistanis have been deported from 138 countries since 2015. And these countries basically are Saudi, Oman, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Iran, and Turkey, which is very interesting to see, sir.
Mm-hmm.
The average deportation of Pakistani has been 147 Pakistanis per day.
Okay.
That's
interesting.
Very interesting. Of which Saudi Arabia deported 52% of the number that I've mentioned, sir. Powerful bomb blasts in front of Lashkar-e-Toiba or Jamaat-ud-Dawah chief Hafiz Saeed's house in Lahore. It killed 3 people. Pakistanis obviously blamed India for it. We will come to this, blast when we actually come into our discussion. I'd just like to go ahead with a couple of other news that came out of Pakistan, that the Saudis have decided to move their oil refinery, and this was a project worth $10 billion from Gwadar, citing lack of infrastructural facilities within the port. So the Chinese port is again in question. Let's see how these things go. Another rumor that me and General Shankar were discussing offline was a coup attempt that was supposedly done on the Pakistani Army Chief General Bajwa. And almost 14 Pakistani army officers, including 4 major generals, have been arrested in this coup attempt, which is a very, very serious thing if actually this has happened. And we all know there is a bit of a rift, and a couple of generals are miffed with the fact that they've not been able to get promoted because General Bajwa had taken a 3-year extension. So I wonder what has exactly happened. Pakistan, obviously, we all know, has been kept under the grey list for the next 3 months. Till October, the estimated loss is about $38 billion to the Pakistani economy.
Yeah.
And an interesting news today, Pakistan actually said is being pressured to take sides between USA and China. That's very interesting. Pakistan seems to find itself in difficult positions, self-created sometimes, most of the time that you have an interaction with their leaders. Won't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. What you have to understand is that historically Pakistan has swung between 3 powers.
Yeah.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, USA, and China. Whenever any two got aligned, Pakistan swung that way.
Mm.
And Pakistan was hoping to align itself in the nexus between Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and China. And that alignment was through this refinery at Gwadar. And they thought that if Saudis invest in Gwadar and Gwadar comes up, and the Saudis invest in Gwadar and the Chinese anyway they're in Gwadar, that whole thing comes up, with mutual interests of Saudi Arabia and China, they can prosper. Now that is at risk, right? And what is also happening is it appears that the US and Saudis have a plan to handle Pakistan. So that is an interesting thing and that's what puts Pakistan in a difficult position. And that is why Imran Khan has come out and said that he's being forced to choose sides. And the pressure is from KSA. It's not from China or USA directly. Of course, they each putting their own pressure on Pakistan, but that's how it is. Yeah, we can discuss this.
That's a large amount of money that you're talking about here, sir.
Yeah, it's not only money. There's influence. There's a lot of things.
Just a moment to spend on a couple of news that came out of Afghanistan. We always hear that the Taliban is overtaking many districts and stuff like that. This particular week, the Afghan forces have freed almost 6 districts from the Talibanis, and in the past 24 hours, they report killing 254 Talibani fighters. So, all seems to be, gaining some sort of a balance, wherein the US has also told the Taliban that if you continue with this, we will be starting our airstrikes back again. So that gives the entire, scenario a big doldrum, actually, sir.
Yeah, what one has to understand is that, every analyst and every indication indicates that Afghanistan is descending into a civil war. right? The Pakistanis are openly siding Taliban, and they'll be very happy if Taliban seizes power. Whether they have full control over Afghanistan or not is not the issue, but they would like a Taliban in power rather than the Afghan government as of now. But then the Afghan government has the support of USA. It's in the interest of USA that this Afghan government stands. If that has to stand, USA will keep supporting them with air power, right? And if, as far as I mean, Taliban doesn't have air power, we know. And as far as Afghanistan has air power, and it has still got its intrinsic strength, and this to and fro of taking over districts and handing over districts and fighting for districts will continue.
Correct.
What you said is right. I've also got some intimation through local news that a whole lot of territory which was supposed to have been occupied by Taliban has been freed. So this to and fro will continue, and that is the danger for Pakistan.
That actually tells you that they were probably regrouping during the time that the Talibanis made the offensive at that time. And
See, if you go back in time, this issue was there before Taliban fully took over. Even when Taliban took over Kabul and were running the government, they still had problems on the Northern Alliance.
yeah,
Right? Ahmad Shah Massoud and Dostum and all that. So this is not going to run away. Afghanistan is slowly descending into instability. Right? Everyone is going to put his hand into it. I don't know whether Iran can be coerced into it or Pakistan will go all out. China has problems. Everyone says China is going to get into problems once Afghanistan goes haywire.
yes,
Right? The more important thing is for Pakistan.
correct.
Right? If you see, there's a whole lot of Tehrik-e-Taliban people who are taking shelter in Afghanistan. And if Afghanistan is not controlled, all these chaps have got a free reign and free sanctuary in Afghanistan, and they'll operate in Pakistan.
Yep.
Then the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement has also got issues. And the Baluchis also become more strident, right? Plus, we don't know who are the guys who are carrying out these attacks within Pakistan, like that blast which happened in front of the LET chief's house. And you also have to look at the fact that the German video which came out before the FATF, it all indicates that Pakistan is as much as Pakistan is outbound terrorist hub. It's a porous society within. So if someone decides to finger Pakistan, it can be done. See, it'll all happen. There's going to be a cauldron, and Pakistan will get sucked in. They'll suck in China. This is what I've been saying, but it's going to happen.
Sir.
But I think there are 4 other issues of Pakistan which we have to factor.
Let's start with the first one, sir. It's the civilian relationship of Pakistan and Afghanistan doesn't seem to be on track, as you just said. Pakistanis are hoping and wishing to have a friendly Taliban on their side. Post the name calling that happened, and I won't want to start with the name calling on this particular show because it was really vulgar.
That's okay. That's there. It just indicates the kind of animosity which is between them.
Yes, absolutely, sir. The Pakistani foreign minister did an interview with a Afghanistan news channel where he kind of relit this whole question of Osama bin Laden being a martyr.
Yeah, martyr.
I'd like you to comment on this, sir.
See, let's face facts. Osama bin Laden being in Pakistan for so long could have happened only with the state being involved. Otherwise, it could not have happened. And there is a large section of Pakistanis who believe he's a martyr. So let's accept the fact. I mean, we know what Pakistan is. So that's how it is. Right. And that's how Pakistan behaves. So we know what Pakistan is. Nothing surprising. Yeah.
That is interesting. So there's also a thought process where Pakistan is, obviously, as we were discussing, is trying to play a double game wherein they are, as the face value of it with the peace team, which is supposed to be dealing with the peace process in Afghanistan, and on the side they are winking at the Taliban to capture and do whatever they need.
Yeah, that's a normal way they do it.
Yes.
So it's okay.
Yes, sir. I'd like us to spend a little time on the misconception of Pakistan, hoping to hell that the Taliban does come into power and they would have a subservient Taliban in Afghanistan.
See, subservient Taliban is out. Every newspaper in Afghanistan, any analysts say, Taliban is a headache for Pakistan. It's no more the old Taliban. Neither is it the old Pakistan. Their equations are not that great. So, if Taliban takes over, there's a problem. If Taliban doesn't take over, there's a problem. So, it is, any way you look at it, there is a problem for Pakistan. Plus, as far as the Afghanistan is unstable, the entire Durand line will be unstable. So that puts Pakistan on a leash. Everyone says that Pakistan has all cards and all that, but I don't think so. And Pakistan has its own problems. There's no water, there's no electricity, inflation continues to be rampant. Their economy is still in a bad shape. So what all can they do? And how much will China keep funding them?
Chinese only give loans, sir. So
yeah, that's a different story. Whatever the equation is, and it's a 70-year-old equation between Pakistan and China. So whether they give loan or write off loans, it's their headache. But the fact is that it's not going to be an easy equation between the two.
Interesting. So I'd like to talk about this big blast that took place in front of Hafiz Saeed's house, and it is funny that within minutes of this particular thing happening, the Pakistani news media started saying that this has India's footprints all over it. The timing of this seems a bit weird, just before the FATF and the target as well. What do you have to say to this, sir?
Let's be very clear. Pakistan has enough enemies besides India. India is one in their conception. Okay. But there are enough people who don't like Pakistan, who want to keep Pakistan on the grey list. They're not interested. They have to keep Pakistan on a leash. It could have been done by anyone. Everyone knows the truth. And one little blast like this, and the truth comes out, and it came out, and that's good enough reason for them to be kept on the FATF blacklist. Why would the West take Pakistan out of their blacklist or the grey list? If you take Pakistan out of the grey list, it is home and free. That means it will get funds, everything. There's no leash. No one will let them off the leash. So that will continue. So let's not this thing. Yeah, the issue is that is this Jammu, drone attack a retaliation for their perceived thing that we did that attack there? That's the issue, which means there are more implications to this in the future. I mean, let's look at it. What happens in Pakistan is one thing. We should understand what is there in it for us.
Yes.
Okay. It is also Pakistan's way of saying, okay, we are around. I mean, they're also posing a threat to us. It's a reminder that, look, you have, and for that, we have to take care of our own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have to.
Are they trying to show their relevance by?
See, Pakistan is one country which will always try to be relevant. Okay. Whether you like it or not, that's their psyche. It's a military state. It has a military outlook. Okay. And it will continue that. So we don't, I mean, thinking that Pakistan will be a nice neighbor like Bangladesh is fallacy. So we need to understand. We need to understand the developments in Pakistan. Right? So I don't see. How do we deal with Pakistan is a bigger issue.
Yeah.
See, the questions which India has to answer is, should we give a safe eastern border to Pakistan so that they can concentrate on the West? It has got merits and demerits. Or let them concentrate on the West and then keep them on a leash. What do you do? I mean, we need to have. Why are we doing this? Why are we discussing Pakistan and Afghanistan? One is, of course, the India-Afghan relations, fine. But more importantly, how do you deal with Pakistan in that emerging situation? that is for me, is the more important thing.
Yeah.
How will things improve in this triangle of Afghanistan, China, India? Sorry, Afghanistan, China, Pakistan. What vulnerabilities will develop for China and Pakistan? How can we use them? What will be the impact on Eastern Ladakh? What will be the impact on J&K? Okay. Many people feel that, the government calling the leaders uh, of J&K and starting this political process is at the behest of USA. I don't entirely agree with it. It could be well because you want to have a good base, and this is the time when Pakistan is forced to look away that you start normalizing J&K. And if you have some political process going on in J&K, you get a better base in J&K. You're stronger to deal either with Pakistan or China.
Correct.
So to that extent, we should understand what's happening in Pakistan, and not gloat about it. We need to know what is happening in Pakistan to take advantage for our purpose. Right? So yeah.
That's a very wise way of thinking about it. I think we need to somewhere down the line start. It's not a fault line as per se, but it's our own national interest that we are more bothered about. So it should not become that the Pakistanis are troubling us in various other these things again.
Yeah, that's the important thing. We must create this window of opportunity for ourselves, where we have a peaceful western border, right? And the northern border with China, we can handle them. If you have, Pakistan looking westwards and even China starting looking westwards, right? Then the focus is somewhere else. Then we can handle China in a different manner altogether.
Yeah.
We can handle the Indian Ocean in a different manner altogether. Right? And in my way of looking at it, of course, we have stakes in Afghanistan too. We have stakes in Iran. How this entire thing plays out, after all, oil dependency is there. We also have our stakes with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf. The Gulf is investing in us. Right? How this entire thing. So we have to keep Pakistan bottled and looking that side. Let them look that side. In my way of looking at it, Pakistan faces an existential problem from Afghanistan, not from us.
Yeah.
So let it be there. So, I mean, the whole idea of this discussion is what is the outcome for India and what should be our future plans.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another crisis which is developing in Pakistan, and this is not newsworthy as per se, but the economic situation is pretty much down in the dumps. They're having, as I mentioned, $38 billion loss with regard to the blacklist in 3 months. Then, of course, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia moving out or moving away their investments currently. So that's going to pinch them quite hard. And
no, there are other issues also. See, the loans from China have doubled.
Yeah.
Okay, that is one part. Then the issue which you mentioned earlier, that a lot of people from outside Pakistan are being deported back into Pakistan or sent back to Pakistan. As a result, their inward remittances have gone up because people have come with their money. But future remittances will not come. So despite they manage their current account deficit reasonably well, I must say. But despite remittances and inward remittances due to this influx and current account deficit going down, still they're having inflation. Their loan bill is going up. They're having power shortages.
Yeah.
Right? And their water situation is not improving. Okay. I mean, these are fundamental to the way their economy is going. You add to the dislocation of the CPEC is where it is. It's not progressing anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. And with this dislocation which is happening of the Saudi investment along Gwadar and other things, their economy is going nowhere. And as far long as their economy is going nowhere and Afghanistan is on a boil, the begging bowl is still out. And what do we do about it is the issue which we have to come at. That means you can manage the situation with Pakistan diplomatically rather than militarily. Okay. It also opens up. Look, I might go on a tangent, but the fact is this: when we scrapped Article 370, we also said that Gilgit-Baltistan is ours. It also opens up the thing: can we start a political process in Gilgit-Baltistan? The day you do that, in this entire business between Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, and India, Gilgit-Baltistan is the center of gravity geographically. If you start something there, you're going to have different outcomes.
Yeah.
But for that, you need JNK to be stable. And that's where this political process starts. There are a lot of linkages. So are we thinking on those terms? That's the question mark.
Correct.
If we are great, nothing like it. But I would, again, doing that is not an easy process. We have to be very clear about it.
Yeah. So we're going to have a lot of pressure from China, of course, with regards to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. We are in the situation, we should handle it.
Absolutely. So, big issue which is going to come up in this particular region, as it is, we sit in the middle of the Golden Triangle, is narco-terrorism. The flow of drugs, the flow of, all the other kind of material that actually comes in from Afghanistan into Pakistan, into India. And that is one worry which I have personally as well. And I think we've discussed this on a separate, offline chat as well. How do you see that situation going forward? And do we have any, do you see any plans from us to kind of put a stem to it?
Let me put it up front. That's a major problem for India. It's not a new problem, it's an old problem. I remember Dr. K. Subramaniam, when I was doing staff college, I'm now talking of 91, 92, he had come to speak to us. And he then said that he explained to us how Pakistan economy was going up despite doing nothing. And he explained the entire narco economy. Right? After all, Afghanistan still remains the biggest producer of poppies and opium in the world. And that entire thing was being brought through Pakistan. And Pakistan economy was going up only because of narcotics. The danger today is that will Pakistan go back to that level? Because if its economy is going down in all of the spheres, and if Taliban is hoisted onto Pakistan or the Afghanistan, and they control this poppy belt in Afghanistan, they'll get back to narco-terrorism and narco-economy. That is the thing. And let me tell you, we don't have any handle on that. I mean, you look at it, why did Taliban come up? Despite all this pressure of US and presence there? Narcotics. In 20 years that USA was there, they couldn't disrupt the narcotic economy of Afghanistan. So this is a live problem. And what is worse is that already Punjab is facing a drug problem. So we have to have a strategy to counter this. How? We have to think out of the box. Right? I mean, I don't have answers for this, but I think this is a major problem which I foresee happening. That is the worst thing. That's the worst case scenario for us. Yeah.
It's a worrying factor, sir, because, being the fact that today, if you look at a drone, if they can fly a grenade or whatever they did, they can obviously fly a kg of other things unknown.
Narcotic trade will resume. That's a given as things are moving. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. So one has to start thinking on that, which I don't see that discussion happening in our strategic envelope, right? Maybe this talk of ours will make people think on that.
I hope so, because as you said, and it kind of rings a bell when you say that how was Taliban basically survived for all this while.
Yeah,
They drive big cars when they are abroad. They stay in luxury hotels.
yeah,
They've got the money
it's
for it.
narcotics.
So we were talking about India finding its own way, because at the end of it, we have to look at our own interests. Afghanistan is a place where we invested over $3 billion. There are a lot of Indian people that are staying there. I think 3,000 expats, if I'm not mistaken, are there, advisors for some military men, engineers, so on and so forth, who are looking after our projects and stuff like that. We saw recent, I'd not call it shuttle diplomacy, but I'd call it shuttle trips happening to Doha from our EAM. And although nothing has been confirmed from our government, but there are reports coming out from Doha that India has established links and are in talks with the Taliban chief negotiators and all that. How do you see this situation going forward? One, two, will the Taliban actually agree to safeguard Indian interests in that region?
Let's see how it pans out. We've opened channels of communication with Taliban. We have good relations with Afghan people. We have good relations with the current Afghan government. We have to be relevant, right? As long as you start talking to Taliban, Pakistan has a problem. Okay, whether the talks are successful or not, we don't know. So that keeps Pakistan on the tenterhooks. So let us do that. So, okay. And if you can, let's be very clear that we also know, and we should not be under no, false premises, that the Taliban is fully supported by Pakistan and they have greater links. But then you can always open channels of communication, right? And be relevant. Ultimately, in Afghanistan, people like India.
Yeah.
That is something which we have to think. We have to play the game with the cards we are dealt with. So we have to help the current government. We have to play something with Taliban. We also have to help or assist, be on the same page with USA to be relevant there. After all, we are partners in Quad. There are other strategic partnerships involved. So a lot of things are involved. And we have our channels. We have a goodwill in the Gulf. So, right? We still have cards to play. I don't think we should have any issue. And again, our focus, first priority, Pakistan, second priority, Afghanistan. Both being almost equal priority, but our focus has to be Pakistan.
So one of the things I think you said very nicely is that we need to keep Pakistan bottled up.
Yeah, we need to keep Pakistan, in this thing. So I think that sums up today's talk.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Sir, thank you. This has obviously been a very interesting conversation to realize there are small moves being made all around our neighborhood. China, of course, has been on the back foot a little bit because of their own celebrations and so on and so forth. But I'm sure once the party is over, they'll all wake up the next morning and start doing whatever they need to do. But the Afghanistan situation is quite fluid. Unless, apart from what has been reported in the news, that it's all grim, wherein the Taliban is capturing districts, you've also confirmed the factor that there is a pushback within the Afghan National Army to, push the Taliban out of districts that they've captured. And that's very interesting. And that might raise a lot of questions for Pakistan as well. FATF is an interesting thing. And I agree with you that it's kind of a leash that the world is putting on Pakistan. And there is I think it's a way that this time America is going to control Pakistan, because last time when the Americans wanted to get something from the Pakistanis went on a free run, and we all know what happened after that. So I guess this is the way that the world is going to kind of keep a leash, although one can't overtly do it because of obviously Pakistan is also a pretty, strong player in this entire game of Afghanistan. Sir, thank you so much. I think we'll catch up in the next, fortnight for another talk about India's neighborhood and how we see things going forward.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It was a nice discussion. And maybe next time we'll focus on Bangladesh and Bhutan and other places also, so that we get a overview of what's happening in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.